We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
War rages on in Europe, and yet it's not only overseas where the impact is felt. Political, financial, and emotional pain just keep coming. And we have to ask, is Joe Biden the man to help ease this pain? Welcome to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we discuss President Joe Biden's State of the Union speech, globalist organizations and the war in Ukraine, how Vladimir Putin has impacted prices at the American gas pump, and the latest on the Supreme Court nomination. I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Andrews, Texas on KACT 1360 AM. Thanks for being here. And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. President Biden's first State of the Union speech is delivered. Are Americans more confident in the strength and stability of their country now, or did Joe Biden leave them dazed, confused, and disappointed? Well, to examine the zeitgeist, we're joined by Liberty Nation's senior political analyst and longtime host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner. Thanks for being here, Tim.
Oh, always a pleasure, Mark.
So the first question has to be, did Joe Biden deliver or not?
Well, I'm going to try to be as fair to him as I can in saying that these State of the Union addresses, maybe it's always been this way, but it certainly has for at least the last 20, 25, 30 years. It's just a big political advertisement. There's nothing serious unveiled. It's a wish list. It's a, gee, haven't we done great? I mean, heck, Jimmy Carter tried to do the same thing during his presidency because, you try to put the best spin that you possibly can. You're trying to put, you're trying to make a bad thing look good. And that's what he did. And he used, he fell back on all this lofty rhetoric, which we see during State of the Union addresses. Some of my favorites were, light will win over darkness. That was a really good one, referring to a sacred space that is the United States, a citadel of democracy. This kind of soaring rhetoric is what presidents generally try to bring forward. But the point is, he didn't present anything of value in terms of fighting against Ukraine. He tried to take credit for building the coalition as if having Soviet or Russian tanks and military hardware on your doorstep isn't enough to get you to pay attention by yourself. No, it was Joe Biden that put the coalition together. And then he fell back on a lot of the old bromides. Like, this is one of my pet peeves, Mark, that the rich, the wealthy corporations need to pay their fair share. That's never defined what the fair share is. And
I think it's notable, Tim, that he always uses the term that they haven't paid any federal tax. As it's and people think that's the only tax going. Elon Musk, for example,
people don't care if they're taxed 100% if it's just local or state.
Yeah,
it's only federal tax they object to. But the thing that bordered on the bizarre was Joe Biden standing up there 3 times saying, fund the police. Don't defund the police, fund the police, fund the police, fund the police. 3 times he said it. It's already gotten him in trouble on the left. And then he said, even more inexplicably, secure the border, which he has rendered insecure.
But surely he was talking about the Ukrainian border, Tim.
Oh.
He just got confused with which country is which, as he did with Russia and Iran, I believe.
So he didn't advance the ball really at all. And the thing is, Mark, what it marked for him is that he is a politician with absolutely no courage. I look at his career, I look at that speech, I look at the first year of his presidency. He has not done one thing that took true political courage. Instead, he caved on most occasions to the left. He caved to the loudest voices in the room, and he has not made the single courageous decision which needs to be made, which is to open up the spigots again, to open the Keystone Pipeline. Instead, after closing the Keystone Pipeline and then having contrarians say this week, well, one of the answers to our dependence to the point of 10% on Russian oil is to open up the spigots. And then they say, well, but the Keystone Pipeline's been shut down. It'll take years for that to make a difference. So they shut it down, and then they say, oh, well, opening it won't make any difference. You see how they do that?
Yeah.
And so the correct thing he could have done, of course, was to open up the fossil fuel production again, but he won't do that because he is a slave to the loudest voices in the room, because he has no courage.
It's funny that you mentioned that particular issue, because something that really flew under the radar this last week was there was actually a vote in the House on reissuing licenses for fossil fuels. And Democrats, it was a 221 to 202 vote against doing that in the midst of all this crisis and this surging energy prices, and the Democrats in a united front voted against that. So you're right, it's really a lack of political courage there.
Well, now, it's green energy is their story, and they're sticking to it.
And they're God. And they're God. Now, you mentioned about Joe Biden was pushing the Ukraine thing almost as though it was his victory. So he's riding on the coattails of the strength of the Ukrainian people and their leadership. But that can't last, can it?
No, because he has no strength himself. And people recognize that. There's a reason he's cresting at about 40% in the polls. There's a reason that he has the lowest approval rating of any first-year president, I think, ever, since they started recording it. Certainly in my lifetime, because he has no strength. The Ukrainian thing is something that's going to run out eventually, or it's going to require him to make a very difficult decision to get militarily involved in some way, or send weapons that his left objects to intensifying the war. Eventually, and it'll be pretty soon, he's going to have to make decisions that require strength, and he just does not have that strength. So no, this is a temporary hit that allows him to sidestep inflation, the border crisis, the crime wave. But it was, lest we forget, that Vladimir Putin, in a rant, I believe it was in 2019, he spoke of the decadence of the West, the softness, and how they get all entangled in issues of transgenders and boys becoming girls and girls becoming boys. These are his words, not mine. So it was the weakness of Biden to begin with that emboldened Putin to invade when he wouldn't do it under Trump. Did it under George W. Bush. He invaded Georgia. Under Obama, he annexed Crimea. And under Biden, he's trying to overtake Ukraine. Notice which administration he did not expand the Russian Empire, and that would be Donald Trump.
Yep, and I think that's something that's going to become more and more apparent as enemies of the West and America specifically become more emboldened. Tim Donner, thank you ever so much. After this short break, we'll be back with Dave Patterson to figure out what role global organizations have played in the Ukraine conflict. Have they been more of a hindrance than a help? We'll be right back. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
Maybe tracking polls sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.